back to the kitchen. This week we're going to be making chocolate chip cookies. And this is from an old family recipe, but I make my own little modifications. Okay, so we're going to be using flour. This time I'm going to use some gluten-free flour so that I can share these cookies with some gluten-free friends that I have. Also, we have regular sugar, brown sugar, baking soda, salt, walnuts, and I actually like to do a mix of walnuts and pecans. Butter, of course, and chocolate. I bought this brand of chocolate because it is made without slave labor. A lot of chocolate is actually made with slave labor, I recently learned. So I bought this brand because they're working to end that practice, and this is made without slave labor. Unfortunately, they do not sell it in chips, so I'm just going to be taking these bars and chopping them up into chunks for the cookies. Also, we have to do the same thing with our walnuts and pecans, so we're going to get started on that. This recipe is calling for 1.5 cups of the nuts. I'm not going to be too precise with this, especially because once you chop them, they take up less room once they're chopped smaller. Oh, you know what? These were already chopped. Okay, that's handy. So we do not have to chop those. But we do have to chop our walnuts still. So like with most cookie recipes, we are going to be combining our butters and sugars together with the liquid ingredients in one bowl and our dry ingredients in another bowl. This time I did remember to leave my butter out for a while, so it's already at room temperature. I don't have to use the microwave at all. You can see it's already quite squishy, right? This recipe calls for 1.5 cups, which is the same as 3 sticks. Now, the original recipe called for shortening, but I prefer to just use butter. This always makes me think of Great Grandma, whose recipe this is. Great Grandma always scraped the butter off the paper so you don't waste any. The shortening off the paper in her case. Shortening, if you don't know, that's like, it's Crisco basically. That's the brand of shortening that most people buy if they use it. Alright, so we are using 1 1/8 cup of regular sugar and 1 1/8 cup of brown sugar. Just make this a bit simpler here and just use 1 cup of the regular sugar and 1 1/4 cups of the brown sugar. That way you don't have to mess around with the 1/8 cup, because I don't even have an 1/8 cup it's just easier. And I like the taste of the brown sugar better. So I actually like it when there's more brown sugar than regular white sugar. Now, brown sugar is the ingredient that you do want to pack it down. So we're just going to see, I'm pushing it into the cup and packing it by pressing it through the bag so I don't get sugar all over my hands. Alright, so you can see I've packed it, I hope you can see that I've packed it down. So now I'm going to level it off with the straight edge of my knife here. Alright, I did that inside the bag so it wouldn't be messy, but this is what I did. I just ran the back of the knife across the top to make it nice and flat. Oh wait, this is the fun part. Boop. Just like a little sandcastle. You always want to make sure you squeeze all the air out of this before you wrap it down, because if you get any air in your brown sugar, the next time you open your brown sugar, it is going to be hard as rock. You don't want that. So as long as you shut it up tight like this with no air in it, you'll be good. Then I put this inside a tin. And then this, since it comes in a paper bag, this is going to also be hard as rock, probably, the next time you open it, unless you put this inside a plastic bag. Or if you have one of those special little airtight containers, and that's just for sugar and flour, and you just dump these out into your special containers, great, but I just keep mine in the bags they came in. So this is how I keep mine fresh. Okay, then I store it inside my vintage Coca-Cola tin. Thanks, Aunt Sylvia. That came from her. All right. This one's going to go inside another tin later. I did really carefully wash these and this bowl and everything, just to make sure there was no remaining gluten flour on anything, since I am going to be sharing these with some gluten-free friends, like I said. Alright, so we're going to beat our butters and sugars together until they're light and fluffy. That's the usual rule. Then partway through, I like to scrape down the inside of the bowl, since the mixture does tend to climb up the sides of the bowl. And that way you get it mixed more evenly. Pretty light and fluffy looking. So now it's going to be time to add our eggs and water, I do believe. So this recipe calls for 3 eggs. And I did remember to leave my eggs out, room temperature. And I have my compost bin here so I can put the shells straight in that. You just make it so it's a little dent, and then you can just kind of pry it open. That way you don't end up with egg down the side of your, outside of your bowl and onto your counter, hopefully. Alright, I'm gonna wash my hands since I touched raw egg. Alright, and next the recipe calls for 2 tablespoons of water. Alright, I'm putting my 2 tablespoons of water into this so I could carry it from the sink without spilling it. Yeah, I'm not exactly sure why it calls for 2 tablespoons of water when most of the other cookie recipes I've used don't do that, but don't question Great Grandma. Okay, so now we're going to beat this up again. And I am going to scrape down the sides partway through just to make sure that it gets mixed evenly. So we need a 3 3/8 cup of our flour, and we're going to put that together with our other dry ingredients, which include our baking soda and salt. Alright, so since this mouth of this bag is not really wide enough for me to stick the whole cup inside to level off like I usually do, I'm going to use this bowl to catch the overflow. So 3/8. I do not have an eighth, I have a quarter. So I'm gonna do 1/4 and then half of the quarter. Alright, now we need 1.5 teaspoons of baking soda. Here's a 1 teaspoon, here's a 1/2 teaspoon. And then I just level that off. And the baking soda, of course, is what makes them rise and not be flat little hockey pucks. So you don't use very much, but it's a very important ingredient. Okay, and now we have 1.5 teaspoons of salt. What happened here? Huh. The little spout seems to have fallen off. Okay, well. Let's see if I can rescue this salt without making a huge mess. Right. So now we're going to beat our dry ingredients together. Okay, so now we're going to slowly add our dry ingredients to our butter sugar mixture while beating. Then halfway through we're going to add our vanilla, and our vanilla is also 1.5 teaspoons. Okay, there's our vanilla. I forgot to show you that before. I always buy the one that is the actual real vanilla, where it says pure vanilla extract. If it says vanilla flavored, that's not the same thing. This is better. Alright, vanilla flavored is not necessarily real vanilla. Okay, so we're going to just add a little bit of our flour mixture and beat. Right, you can see how that looks. It is starting to climb up the sides, and I want to make sure this flour that's getting climbing up and stuck to the sides, I want to make sure it gets mixed in with everything else. So I'm going to scrape my sides. And then I'm going to add my vanilla. And finally, we're going to add some more of our flour mixture. And I said finally, but there is still some left, so that's the last of it. And I'm also going to scrape down the sides again. Alright, so now it's time to unplug our mixer and scrape off our beaters. If you want to lick the beaters, I'm not responsible for the results. This does have egg in it, so I would not recommend licking your beaters for something that has raw egg. So I'm just going to scrape mine off. Okay, so now it's time to mix in our chocolate chips and our walnuts and pecans, and we do that by hand. You don't use the mixer for that part. One little other change I made is that the original recipe calls for semi-sweet chocolate chips, but I like dark chocolate, so this is 70% dark. Okay, now we are ready to start putting this on our cookie sheets. Okay, so we have our cookie sheets here, and we're going to line these with some parchment paper. If you're not familiar with parchment paper, it just is really nice because it helps your baked goods to bake more evenly, and it also makes the cleaning up a lot easier because it protects your baking sheets from any gunk or schmutz or anything. Alright, so this is also sold in the same aisle as the wax paper, tin foil and stuff like that. But you don't want to get it mixed up with wax paper. Somebody I know did that once. She used wax paper instead of parchment paper, and obviously wax paper has wax in it, so it just started to melt in the oven. Alright, this is what I use for cookie making. Makes it so much easier. So you just take a scoop. I'll show you. Here's what I do. So I take a scoop, and then I just push it against the side of the bowl to make sure that it's packed in there, like an ice cream scooper. And then we just squeeze the handles together. Then there goes our cookie. Alright, so the oven just beeped, so it is now preheated to 325. I turned it on a minute ago off camera. So we're just about ready to put these in. You can see I'm spacing them about 2 inches apart or so, just so they don't run together while they're baking. Hopefully they don't run together. This is my first time working with this flour, so new ingredients could always behave differently. If they do run together, it's not such a big deal. They still taste just as good. They just don't look quite as perfect. Actually, normally around this time of year when we're making cookies with my aunts, one of my aunts always says, if those cookies run together, your name will be Mud. But I think they'll be okay. Alright, so we're going to put these in the oven. So basically we have one rack that's more towards the top. Actually, this is the very top setting for my oven. And one rack that's more towards the middle. I found that this is the best for cookies. If you have a rack that's more towards the bottom, those cookies tend to get burnt on the bottom. So we're gonna have one towards the top, one towards the middle. If you want to, you can also open up the oven halfway through the baking time, and you can switch them, move the top to the middle and the middle to the top. I found that it's not necessarily always needed. Usually they turn out fine if I just don't flip them. But if I notice that they're baking unevenly, like if I notice these are getting too brown on the bottom or these are getting too brown on the top, then I might flip them halfway through. Okay, so it's been about 15 minutes, but I don't think they're done yet. So I did just flip them. This one was on the top, and then I just switched them. They did run together a bit. Good thing my aunt's not here, or my name would be Mud. But that's okay. Alright, so I don't think these look done yet. You can see that. They just still look a bit pale and a bit wet. Although, my hand's about to burn through the glove. Okay, so you may notice that, I don't know if you can notice that, there are little bubbles in the top of the cookies, and the bubbles have solidified. You see that? Like how you know that a pancake is done? When the bubbles pop and then stay instead of closing back over. So that makes me think that these could be done after all. It's getting a little hard for me to judge just because this gluten-free flour might behave differently from what I'm used to. And possibly it doesn't get quite as brown as the flour that I'm used to. But I'm just going to put them back in for I think 1 or 2 more minutes. And just to make absolutely sure that they're done. Alright, so I left them in for probably about 2 more minutes. And then I could tell by smell that they were done at that point. After you bake for a while, you might be able to start telling by smell when things are done. At least that's how my mom and I are. I don't know, if you bake a lot, and you can let me know if you can tell when things are done by smell or not. I'm interested to know if this is a common ability for people who bake a lot. Anyway, as you can see, they have this nice medium brown color. That's what I was looking for before. So now they definitely look done to me. So I left them on the tray for about, I don't know, 2 minutes or so after taking them out of the oven. And just to let them cool a tiny bit and not be quite so gooey. So now it's going to be easier to get them off with this metal spatula and put them onto our cooling rack here. Alright, and I have my next batch ready to go into the oven. I left them spaced a bit further apart this time, just to keep them from running together. And you can see that the ones that stuck together, you can just like that, and then, yeah, it comes apart pretty easily. And the nice thing about the parchment paper also is you can reuse it. So I'm not gonna throw this out. I'm gonna just put the next batch of cookies on top of this. And I could use this several times in a row before I have to throw it out. Okay, it's time for the test. Okay. These are really good. These are really crispy and light. And you can see how thin they are, which I think is a bonus. I like the thin ones that are crispy on the outside and chewy on the inside. And these are actually even more kind of light and crispy than with the regular flour. So I really like this gluten-free flour a lot. I would recommend this. And these are really delicious. I'm gonna eat a lot of these, probably too many. Okay, thanks for joining me in the kitchen. All right, bye.